once you hear the good stuff, there's no going back. Holy Grail, Mono, UK, Parlophone, Sgt. Pepper, and Giant Orange Records. Since Sounds Good Music is only about 5 minutes from where I live, I go there all the time. They have good new stuff hitting the floor all the time, and they work with me on trades for things that I otherwise probably couldn't afford, so I'll go flip through a stack of records that I don't really listen to anymore. Like for this one, I probably traded like 20 plus records, and I'm going to go through some stuff that I found there this summer. What I will say is that these guys do everything right. And, you know, I've also become friends with the owner and the shop clerk. I might be a little bit biased. Nothing wrong with that. They've spoiled me with their super clean records, insanely great selection, high-level customer service, affordable prices, and just general knowledge of collecting, cleaning, and storing music. So here's my finds from just this summer there. Holy Grail, Mono, UK, Parlophone, Sgt. Pepper. You can't find this version on Spotify, and this is like a near mint copy, which you never see anywhere. I've seen record stores, you know, charge this much for a G plus copy, but for $150 in trades, I traded about 20 records, and including some Bowie and some other stuff. Whew, it is a banger. You can hear the run out groove. There's frequencies that only dogs can hear. You might think it sounds like snake oil, but it's not. Like, I swear, I've heard this album hundreds of times. I heard stuff I've never heard before on this Mono mix. So there's a reason it's collectible. There's a reason it's a thing. It lives up to the hype. And another big record collector nerd, Holy Grail. This is the RL Robert Ludwig hot mix of Led Zeppelin II, which was about the same price as Sgt. Pepper, and I also traded about 15 or 20 really good records, and I found these within probably 2 weeks of each other at the same record store, but this wasn't even necessarily for sale, but they offered it to me. Sometimes I go there on a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday. It's like a moth drawn to a flame. But once you hear the good stuff, there's no going back. Again, another record that lives up to the hype. Now, this one's probably in like VG minus condition, but even in that condition, it blows away my other pressing. Now, this one was cut super hot, and if you don't know the story, I'll retell it. It's been told a million times, but Robert Ludwig was the guy that mastered a lot of albums. This was one famous one that he mastered so hot. One of the Atlantic record executives took this album home, and his daughter played it, teenage daughter played it on her little Fisher-Price record player, and it was cut so hot that it kept bumping the needle out of the grooves. So the next day he stormed into the Atlantic office and said, "We need to stop the presses on this one and cut it so that it doesn't jump out of the grooves." So every subsequent pressing has not sounded as good. Pretty Things were a UK mod psych band, somewhere between the Stones and the Who. These guys are pretty freaking wild. SF Sorrow it's a very controversial record, but very much another like record collector nerd type of record. Again, it's a concept album, and originals they actually have an original, and it kind of has like the corners are cut off here. It's like, it almost looks like a headstone, and that's, I guess, maybe a coffin. And a pretty weird record, pretty out there record. I mean, it's one of the most out there psychedelic records. I got to be in the mood to listen to this. Like, you kind of have to stop what you're doing. You can't listen to this while you're like folding laundry or chopping onions or something. You got to really pay attention to this record. Finally got this. They've been having this one for sale forever. This is the Electric Prunes' second album, Underground. This is the Music on Vinyl 180 gram reissue. This came out in Europe. This is a mono repress. You got the tri-label Steamboat kind of thing. Now, I do believe this one originally came out in 1967, which was still pretty early for psychedelic music. Their first album came out in 1966. I had Too Much to Dream last night, but Underground, I think it's probably a slightly more consistent album than the first one. That has Dr. Dogood, any 60s song with Doctor in it. Probably you can read between the lines and guess what that might mean. Antique Dolls, pretty cool song that's been heavily anthologized. And here's one that I found recently. It sounds good. Foxygen, We Are the 21st Century Ambassadors of Peace and Magic. I think this record came out in 2013 or something like that. And when it came out, everybody flipped out. I mean, this band was everywhere. It was a black vinyl pressing and on like Jaguar or something, which is the label that my old band Explorers Club was on. Anyway, yeah, these guys got written off as pretentious and they had some personnel problems and whatever. And some of the songs are like obviously influenced by the Zombies and Dylan and Shuggy Otis. And there's even a song on here that sounds almost identical to Elvis's Suspicious Minds. Overall, it's a great album. There's all the lyrics and whatever. I haven't read along to it, but maybe I should. Anyway, this is the only Foxygen album that I like. They've made quite a few others, and this one, they just, all the right pieces came together. It's a good kind of psychedelic pop indie rock album. And I think this came out just a little bit before like Tame Impala, or maybe around the same time. Anyway, this was kind of a huge deal. They might have disbanded, but they kind of had some personal problems that made it into the news and into places like Pitchfork, and Vice wrote a pretty mean article about why Foxygen's terrible. Which, if you want a good laugh, go read that if you're bored enough. But anyway, I say the music is enjoyable on this album from start to finish. And there was a time in my life where this album meant a lot to me, so I was happy to find it on vinyl. And then just two more 60s psych albums real quick. This is the Rationals from Detroit. I think this one wins for one of the coolest album covers of all time. Pretty cool album. Apparently they were more of like a soul band, and they'd kind of turned into a psychedelic band. The only thing that gets a little annoying on this album is they do like a little interlude thing between every single song. If you'd done it on a couple of songs, cool, but every single song gets a little bit too predictable. But overall, I really enjoyed this record. This is one of those where I'd streamed a handful of times. I'm like, should I get it? Should I not get it? But again, this one hits different on vinyl, as I say over and over, because some records just, you can stream it and whatever, and it might grab you and it might be cool, but you listen to it on vinyl and you're like, whoa, like that kicked open the door to my mind. And while it's not the greatest psych record ever, it's pretty good. And here's another really, really weird one. This is so out there. I think this was on Frank Zappa's label. This is Farewell Aldebaran by Judy Henske and Jerry Yester. I mean, as you can see, this is sort of like an inverted photograph. And there's, I think, that same photo. Pretty freaky stuff. And if you open up this gatefold, I mean, this is like a psychedelic children's book or something, which probably sums up the 1960s pretty well. All the lyrics are there. It's kind of a busy background. I like the artistry of it. It's quite neat, and just what a far out cover. It was mostly like folky psych music, but some of the music is some of the most far out 60s music, and that's really, really saying something. But again, it was on Frank Zappa's label, so Frank Zappa was a pretty far out guy. That's all I got for now. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next time. Support your local record store. I think my t-shirt even says that. Support your local record store. Giant, orange, giant, orange, giant, orange.